What do you think would happen if you were given a court order and tossed it in the trash? Don't do that. But what would happen if you were someone like the leader of a nation? Well, the union of this country was consummated with a quickie. It was good enough to satisfy with the time available, but they forgot to put protection in place, despite the fact that every other country does. So we were left with the birth of a nation without any support. And because of this, it allows people in power to ignore court orders without consequence. And despite the Constitution saying that no person is above the law, over time we've established law granting judicial immunity, presidential immunity, qualified immunity, quasi-qualified immunity, sovereign immunity, absolute immunity, diplomatic immunity, prosecutorial immunity, legislative immunity, and even the 11th Amendment that guarantees states immunity. If you're in a position of power, the US has an immunity for that. The only people that suffer from it are, well, the people. But what happens if the judiciary's order is unjust as well? Again, without any protection, the people are the ones that suffer. I'm going to take you back and remind you what happens, and all you need is $25 to see the faces of the men that did it. When we became a nation, we said that we would honor the treaties with the native nations around the country that already had sovereignty. But $20 Jackson wanted their land, so he and Congress passed the Indian Removal Act of 1830, and Georgia was like, great, now we get to kick out all the native nations and take their land. But there were some white folk missionaries that didn't support this, made it to the Supreme Court, where in 1832, Worcester v. Georgia said, hey, the Cherokee Nation is sovereign, so Georgia, you need to back off and leave them alone. And President Andrew Jackson was like, ooh, big words, Chief Justice Marshall, but what you gonna do about it? And so Georgia just kept doing whatever it wanted. Nothing happened to Jackson. In fact, it got him reelected. And this later became the Trail of Tears that forced the removal of nations from their ancestral lands, where an estimated 10,000 out of the 16,000 to 17,000 died on the trail or after they arrived. Now fast forward to good old $5 Abe in 1861. The Civil War had just started and Maryland was on the verge of seceding. If Maryland fell, the capital would be cut off. So Abe tells the military, hey, lock anyone up that may be part of the Confederate movement. I mean, what he was doing is no different than how we treat suspected terrorists today. But John Merriman asked a judge whether or not the army actually had any lawful basis to detain him. Now, Chief Justice Taney just happened to be subbing in the circuit court. Taney said Lincoln didn't have the authority to do it and only Congress could. But Abe was like, let me be honest, you're wrong. I'm not gonna let the Union fall. Homie's gonna stay in jail until after the war is over. And he wasn't part of the over 700,000 that died during the war, but his defense to keep the Union together and stand by the rights of the people did eventually cost him his life, and the presidency was replaced with a different bad Andrew. Either way, it just goes to show how many holes our Constitution has, so make sure to follow because I'm going to be sharing some unbelievable numbers that show you just how bad things truly are, while also sharing how we can make it right. Coming up next.